Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what cross him.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
Good morning from the Bat Cave. It is Wednesday, January 3rd, 2024. And I'm going to kind of walk you guys through the story of Abraham. Now, if you watched my last video on the genealogical records and things like that, then that will kind of take you to where we are. But again, when you're going through the book of Genesis, you want to look at wherever it says, now these are the generations of, and it kind of starts a new person. That's kind of how if you had to break Genesis down into individual books, that's how those books would be, okay? So the main point of Genesis 11 is, in really Genesis 10 as well, is to explain how the nations spread out, how they got to their different languages, and then to bring the genealogy of Shem down to Abraham. Because if you remember the last prophecy, you want to remember there's an internal logic to the Bible and how it's laid out. It is going to point to the things that God said before and then bring the fulfillment of that forward. And you're going to find this pattern through the whole of Scripture, okay? So just like in Genesis 9, we have Noah saying, "Blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant, and God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem." This is developing out this prophecy about Shem, because essentially he's saying the Lord God of Shem, he's telling you that Shem is basically the high priest, and this dwelling in the tents of Shem is actually a prophecy about Messiah coming through Shem. So when Moses goes and gets into the narrative of how the world got spread out so far and how it came to speak all these different languages, he's then going to go immediately to he's going to finalize that with Shem and the genealogy from Shem down to Terah. And this is why it's going to stop when these are the sons of, it's going to stop with, and Terah lived 70 years and begot Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. In the same way, you're going to see Adam's genealogy go down to Noah, and now we're going to have a new storyline come. So now it says, now these are the generations of Terah. And it's interesting, it doesn't start with these are the generations of Abraham. And I think the reason is because Haran and Lot and Nahor, they're going to still be in the story of Abraham, really for a couple of generations. So it's really about the family of Terah, with obviously Abraham being, the main guy. Just like, the end of Genesis is about the family of Jacob, with Joseph being the main guy. It's like you have a main figure that kind of carries the narrative forward, but the whole family is important, okay? Because this is all the house of Shem, and this is essentially the people who God is calling out. Now he calls out Terah essentially the hard way by Haran being killed. And then basically Terah, Abraham, and Nahor are going to go live in Haran. And I think Nahor is actually going to end up settling in Aram, which is like the Damascus area. And then Lot is going to hang out with Abraham. And then once Terah dies, Abraham is going to it's saying they're going to be in Ur of the Chaldees. And so here's where Abraham's individual narrative now starts up. It says, "Now the Lord said to Abraham, Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee, and I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, I will curse them that curse thee. In thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed." So this is the original call and the promise to Abraham. So you're going to see this call reiterated in Genesis 15, and that's where it's going to say, "And Abraham believed God, and God accounted it to him as righteousness." Well, he's giving the promise here, and Abraham's obviously believing the promise here. But it's the promise is going to get more and more specific in time. The promise is the same, but how God's going to bring it out is going to get more specific. And this is kind of almost like a microcosm of how God deals with prophecy overall. And what you have happen, kind of like the whole seed of the woman theory, is it's going to keep getting more and more refined until it has to be a very specific descendant, which happens to be coming somehow from a line that is also cursed to not have anyone in that line. And then if you get all these prophecies put together, you find out that Jesus has to be of the line of Joseph, he has to be of the line of Levi, and he has to be of the line of David. He can't be a descendant of Jeconiah, but he has to be from the line of Jeconiah, which seems almost impossible. And then eventually he has to be born of a virgin on top of that. And so it's going to keep narrowing this down and down and down and down and down. Well, that starts with Abraham. And so it's going to start out with just a general promise to Abraham that's just going to say, in thee all the families of the earth shall be blessed. I'll bless them and curse thee. I'm going to make thee a great nation. Your name will be great. And again, notice it says all the families of the earth shall be blessed instead of all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. So it doesn't really say how. It doesn't give specifics, but he's telling him to leave and go to a land that he's going to show him. So Abraham doesn't know where he's going until God says this is the land. Okay? So he says he departs as the Lord has spoken to him, and Lot went with him, and Abraham was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. So notice how he says, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house. Okay, so he is leaving his father's house. His older brother Haran is going to basically be inheriting the house. And if he would have stayed there, he would have been naturally fallen under Haran's authority, as Haran being the firstborn, or the elder of the two. And so he leaves, and then he takes Lot with him. Now, I don't know if this is because he's kind of watching over Lot because his father got killed. It actually doesn't make sense, because now that I'm thinking about this, the whole prophecy about Abraham being a child and him killing his brother instead when he's a child, well, Haran has a kid. So Haran has a son, so this has to be a false prophecy or a false teaching, because again, that's in the book of Jasher, and the Muslims hold to it. But it has to be false if Haran's got a kid, because how would you mistake him for Abraham if this is supposedly being Abraham as a child, if Haran's fully grown with a kid and Haran gets killed? So there's something off about that story. I wouldn't bank on it. I wouldn't repeat it. But then you see Abraham takes Sarah's wife and Lot his brother's son and all their substance that they had gathered and all the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth in the land of Canaan. Okay, now I'm going to kind of breeze through this, and I'm going to focus on the main parts of the narrative. But this story is going to basically go from Genesis 12 to, I believe, Genesis 25. Then in Genesis 25, it's going to pick up, and you're going to have this interspersed generations of Ishmael, which obviously would have had to been collected years later. Again, this is Moses writing this, but don't assume like every word is being dictated to him by the Lord. He is probably talking with the Lord, and he's probably dealing with records that have been around. So obviously you're going to have these tribes of Ishmael that are going to come after Abraham, and then you're going to have the same thing with Esau. So it's almost like God kind of wants them to record where their neighbors came from, because they're going to keep dealing with these people, and God is going to deal with them and talk about them as in reference to where they came from, not just what they're doing now. Okay, and then it's going to switch to these are the generations of Isaac, and that's going to be the next narrative. And the generations of Isaac is going to cover the generations of Isaac is going to go up to the story of Jacob and Esau and their conflict, and then it's going to intersperse the generations of Esau in chapter 36, and then when you're going to pick up in chapter 37, you're going to have these are the generations of Jacob. Okay, so chapter 37 is Jacob's unique story, but everything leading up to that, including Jacob and Esau's story, are part of Isaac's story. Okay, so and then obviously Jacob's story is going to go into chapter 50 when they end up in Egypt. So going back to Abraham's story, Genesis 12 is going to talk about God bringing him into the land of Canaan and where he's going to settle down, and then he's going to build an altar at Bethel. And Bethel is going to be a prominent place throughout Israel's history. This is actually going to be in the land of Samaria. It's going to be where the Ephraimites live, and they're going to set up an altar there. Dan, where the counterfeit Mosaic priesthood came from, and then Bethel. This is a prominent location because Abraham and I think Jacob is going to offer up offerings here too, but they built an altar and they're sacrificing to the Lord on Bethel. Okay, and I think it's a mountain. It says on the east of Bethel. Okay. And then Abraham is going to go down to Egypt, and he's going to go down to Egypt because of a famine, and this is actually foreshadowing what's going to happen with his family. So he goes down to Egypt because of a famine, and Sarah gets taken captive, okay? And then he's going to get out of Egypt, and he's going to go into Canaan, back to Canaan from Egypt, and then Sarah's going to get taken captive again, okay? After getting the seed promise of Isaac. Well, the same thing's going to happen with Israel. You're going to have Israel go down into Egypt because of a famine and get taken captive. And then they're going to come out of Egypt back into the land of Canaan. And then after they've gotten the seed promise about Christ being born of a virgin, they're going to go into captivity again. And Isaiah is going to be the one that prophesies that. So it's almost like the destiny of the house of Israel is kind of laced into the story of Abraham, and a number of different parts of that are going to be pulled into that. And that's why you have Paul pulling on Isaac and Ishmael as types of the old and new covenant. And so Abraham's story is going to be like how the Jews tried to save themselves by the law, and then how the ones who the one born in slavery tries to persecute the one who's born of the promise. Okay, so it's almost like the entire story of Israel is in Abraham's life in a type. Okay, so Abraham's going to go into Egypt. He's going to tell Sarah to lie, and she is going to say she's a sister, and then the Lord's going to plague Pharaoh's house, and then Pharaoh's going to let her go. It's going to be like, how could you? And then Abraham's going to go out of Egypt, and Lot's with him this whole time. And then he's going to go back to Bethel. He keeps going back to Bethel where this altar is. And then he says he's between Bethel and Ai. And Ai is, where's Ai? So Bethel and Ai are both going to be in this area, which is going to be, again, if you look at these highlands down here, you see Hebron, you see Bethlehem, you see Jerusalem north of Bethlehem, and then you see Gibeon, and then you see Ai. And so a lot of stuff is going to take place around the area between Hebron, which is the center of Judah, and then Jerusalem, Ai, and Bethel. So that area is going to kind of be central to Abraham's life as well. And this is kind of the highlands region of Israel. It's probably in his day was pretty remote. But when he gets out of Egypt, remember, he's gotten a bunch of stuff from Egypt. His flocks have grown. It doesn't say exactly how much time has gone, but you're probably looking at, he was 75 when he left, before he's 86 when he has Isaac. So all this is going to take place across about 10 years. And now that they've left Egypt and they're coming into these highlands, they're struggling over limited water and resources and stuff like that. And so Abraham's and Lot's servants are going to be fighting over their cattle. And so they're going to, Abraham's basically like, okay, God has given me this whole land. So he's going to say to Lot, go pick a part in this land and that's yours and I'll stay out of that. Okay. And Lot's going to pick the Valley of Jordan because it's well watered, it's green, there's lots of grazing down there. And notice he says, before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So here's Moses. Moses is obviously writing this because it's talking about before God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. Okay, so this is basically the whole Jordan Valley, and before the Dead Sea had flooded it, and I don't know exactly why the Dead Sea came to be where there was a river valley. If somebody has some kind of geological or some archaeological video or thesis on why that happened, I'd love to hear that. But basically Lot's going to go down into Jordan, and he's going to pitch his tent there. So think about it like this. These guys, what these shepherds would do typically is they're going to go down and they're going to have their sheep graze the land. And it's like they're mowing your lawn. And they're just grazing the grass and then dropping dung in the field. And then eventually that field becomes farmland because you're fertilizing it. And these guys would go back and forth, and sometimes they might pay tribute to the king where they're grazing on his land, but they're really being a benefit to the land because they're, essentially are taking, wild herbs and stuff like that and turning it into a manured field. And over time, these guys can then go in as their population grows and just go, okay, well, that field is going to now be a farm. And the Bedouins or these shepherds can kind of be pushed outward and keep, expanding and taking the territories further outland. But as their shepherds and herds are going to grow, these guys are going to get pretty wealthy because they're going to be selling. They don't really have much overhead for their life, and they're basically going to be selling wool and maybe milk and cheese and stuff like that to people. And then they're also going to be selling lambs to them, where it's like these guys are going to eat this stuff. So they're eventually going to get pretty wealthy here. And then he says, after Lot separates from him, God says this to Abraham, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art. So remember, he's up in Bethel. He's up in the mountains. And he says, look northward, southward, eastward, and westward, for all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, to thee and thy seed forever. It'd be pretty cool to go up and just stand where he's standing and just look around and see how far you can see. So then he says, I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth. And this is important. There's going to be multiple iterations where he talks about his seed. Notice he says, I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth here, okay? This is a promise to Abram, not Abraham, to make his seed as the dust of the earth. Well, there's going to be two ways he describes the multiplication of Abraham's descendants. One is going to be the dust of the earth, and one is going to be the stars of the heavens. So think about it like this. If you take this all the way to Corinthians 15, the original man was made out of the dust of the earth. The glorified man is going to be like the stars of the heavens. We're going to shine like stars. And so in Abraham's promise, you're not going to get this until you get to Daniel. And then you're going to start to see, oh, this dust and stars thing is like, it's actually talking about two different types of people. And then you get to the new covenant, and all of a sudden they're making it clear that there's the carnal man and then the spiritual man. And so Abraham's promise right here is going to say he's going to make his seed as the dust of the earth. Well, what does that mean? It means he's going to multiply them, but this is a carnal multiplication. He's going to multiply them with physical descendants. So that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed be numbered. Arise, walk through this land in the length of it and the breadth of it, and I will give it to thee. So Abraham removed his tent and went to the plain of Mamre, which is Hebron, and this is going to be the center of Judah, where David is going to basically come up. That's going to be where David's going to rule until he takes Jerusalem. So you want to mark the subtleties and the changes in these promises. Again, God's never going to change his promise to the negative. He's just going to keep refining the promise. So it's going to be more specific. So first he just says he's going to make of them a great nation. Then he's going to, Then he's going to say that he is going to multiply his seed like the dust of the earth, okay? So that's what he's going to say. And then what's going to happen here is he's going to end up rescuing Lot. Remember, these kings here, this is Amraphel, king of Shinar. The Jews think this is Nimrod. It's either Nimrod or a successor. Based on the fact that the Tower of Babel, I presume, to happen around the time of Joseph, I would assume this is Nimrod in his rise. And so what you have with Nimrod is basically he's going to start out in the south of, this is going to be where Ur of the Chaldees is. This is where Iraq or Uruk is. And this is also where Gilgamesh comes from. Okay, this is why it is very likely that Gilgamesh and Sargon of Akkadian are Nimrod. Okay, Sargon of Akkadian is going to be the cupbearer of Kish, which I believe is Cush. And I think what you had is basically to the south of this, where the two rivers intersected, was going to be where the Hamites were, and to the north was going to be where the Semites were. And I think Kish was Cush, and then I think Nimrod is going to start down here, and then they're going to migrate up and down the Persian Gulf, basically into Arabia, and eventually southern Arabia, and eventually Africa, and then southern Persia, and eventually India. Okay, and so I don't know if, this says Nimrod's Tower of Babel at Eridu. I don't know if that's true. I think Babel is probably Babel, I would guess, because it's going to talk about Asher going up and building Nineveh from here. So I would guess that he's conquering this area right here. But he's going to start out with like a few hundred guys. And basically he's going to subdue the people around him, just because he's got basically a military where most people around him are occupied with farming and herding and hunter-gathering, okay? And he's eventually going to get Elam, which is going to be the oldest son of the Semites, as an ally, probably as a tributary by force, because I don't think they would just naturally turn on their other Semitic cousins. But if they're meant to rule over them because they're the eldest, or they think they're meant to rule over them, and he says, okay, I'm going to subdue you guys, but you're going to rule over all the Semites, well, then that's not such a bad idea. And the people of Elam actually are going to be up, see where you see Susa and all this? These tributaries upstream from the Cushite territory is where they are. So because of where they settled, they're kind of cut off from their Semitic cousins. And so he's going to get these people, and then what you end up with is this guy called Ariak of Elasar, and Elasar, I think, is going to be another kingdom that's going to be right in his area. So I don't know if this is a Hamitic tribe. I don't know who Elasar is, but you see where there's Ur of the Chaldeans, where Abraham is. There's Erech, and Elasar, they think, is over here. It says the Semitic Babylonians form of its name is El-Larsa, that's going to be the Chaldeans. Are Semitic. So they call El-Larsa. It's called Elasar in the book of Genesis. But they think it's in this region right here between Ur and Erech. So you probably had Semites going down these rivers too, and then you probably had basically the Cushites just keep getting pushed south of them, and this is where the Cushites start to push back. So again, Nimrod is gonna keep growing. Chedorlaomer is gonna be the king of Elam, and then there's this guy Tidal, king of nations. That's just what his name is. And my suggestion is that probably Nimrod was consolidating an empire, and then as that empire, basically it was a confederacy, and he had plans to turn it into a federal one world system, and this was going to be his successor, Tidal, king of nations. That would be my guess. So Amraphel's probably, the oldest. These are probably going to be his main allies, or people he's subdued, and then Tidal is going to be a successor. That's just my guess. And so basically they're going to go through, and Bishop Usher is going to calculate this as being around, it's actually before Abraham gets here, that they went and basically made war with these kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they essentially subjugated them. And so this is where Nimrod's kingdom really starts to get big. It basically is growing to the point where he's projecting power from the Euphrates River all the way across into basically northern Arabia and into the borders of Canaan. Because remember, Jordan is the border of Canaan. And so obviously he's not necessarily going to go after most of the Canaanites and Egypt and stuff like that, because they're Hamites too, and his father is the eldest son of the Hamites, so that would be that would be basically his uncle's kids that he would be going after. The Canaanites are going to be different. You're going to have the people of Seir, and you're going to have, I believe they're a Hivite tribe, and I think all the tribes in Sodom, Gomorrah, and that whole valley are Hivites as well. And then there's going to be a sub-tribe of them called the Horites. And basically Esau is going to marry one Hittite, and then he's going to marry a Hivite. And that's how he gets related to the Horites. But it's that tribe that Nimrod is going to basically kick their butt. And see, this is the Horites of Mount Seir, which are, again, the Horites are a Hivite tribe, and I'm going to show you this when we get to Esau's genealogy. And basically it says he smote the whole country of the Amalekites. Well, the Amalekites, remember, this is Moses writing this, okay? The Amalekites have not been born yet, okay? The Amalekites are basically, Amalek was a bastard son of Esau's oldest son with the sister of the head of the Horites, which is, I think her name was Timnah. And this is going to be in Esau's genealogy too. And so you see the Amorites also, okay? So he does subdue the Amorites, which, remember, the Amorites are Abraham's allies. The Amorites are going to eventually come back and take over Babylon. And then basically it says they returned and smote all the country, the Amalekites, the Amorites, and Hazarmaveth. So the Amalekites would be the Negev. So they basically taken out the Negev. The Amorites would be what is now Jordan. So this is going to be basically the east side of the Euphrates River. And then the Horites is going to be Mount Seir, so that's going to be southern Jordan. And basically he makes war with them and subdues them. Then they rebel 13 years later. And then he comes back and he sacks their cities, and that's when he takes Lot. But he also, at that same time, is going to sack the Negev and eastern Jordan, pretty much the whole of eastern Jordan. And so then it says how they got stuck in the slime pits and they fled, and that's how they're going to go ahead and win, and then they're going to take Lot, and then Abraham is going to pursue them, and notice he says he pursues them to Dan. Well, it's not called Dan yet. This is how you know there's later editing in, okay? The land of the Amalekites is not necessarily the land of the Amalekites until they come out of Egypt, and this isn't called Dan until they're in the Promised Land. Now, basically, it's going to be changed to Dan in the days of Joshua. It's very early on. Joshua's still alive. And it's basically the beginning of the book of Judges and the end of the life of Joshua that this happened. So sometime after that, this gets edited. And my guess would be this would be like someone like Samuel doing this, because Samuel seems to be the keeper of the scriptures. The priesthood's obviously going to keep it, but Samuel is living with the high priest, and then the high priest and his sons die, so the priesthood's kind of falling apart for a little bit. And Samuel rises up as a judge, and then you have a prophetic tradition. And you're going to have a split with Samuel with a prophetic tradition and then a priestly tradition after that. And my guess is that Samuel is probably the one who's editing this, because Samuel is going to seem to be the one who puts together the book of Judges and probably pulls the book of Joshua from Joshua's family records, and then probably pulls the book of Ruth from David's family records. And that's essentially what's going to fill the gap between Moses and Samuel. So then, anyways, he says he's going to, they're going to pull a plot. They're going to sneak up on him at night. They're going to take him out. And then Melchizedek is going to bless him. And Melchizedek brings forth bread and wine. He's the priest of the Most High God. Okay, so this is he is probably a Jebusite. He's living in Jebus. That's where Salem is. It's actually the chief city of the Jebusites. This could be someone else, and the Jebusites take it over. The book of Jasher thinks this is Shem. There's no real reason to believe that this is Shem. If it's Shem, he's up here in Jerusalem, and where are all the other Semites? He's surrounded by Canaanites. It doesn't make sense. There's no other Semites that Abraham's going to interact with in the land of Canaan besides himself and Lot. So this is probably, you're going to have Adonizedek, which is the king of the Jebusites when Joshua comes into the land. And Adonizedek means Lord of Righteousness. Melchizedek means King of Righteousness. I think Melchi is king and Zedek is righteousness. And he's going to bless him. He's going to bring forth bread and wine. He's going to bring forth a communion and bless Abraham. And Paul's going to show you this, and he's going to say, this is the greater covenant. Okay? So the greater covenant trumps the lesser covenant. And it just so happens the greater covenant is using bread and wine in a blessing. Okay? From the beginning. So these Canaanites seem to have a read on something that the church is not going to figure out for a couple thousand years from now. Okay? For whatever reason, this Melchizedek, this priest, has a line on this blessing someone with bread and wine, and they have this communion fellowship. And then he blesses them, and he says, "Blessed be Abraham of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, which has delivered thine enemies into thy hand." And he gave him tithes of all. So in other words, Abraham is going to give him a one-time tribute, 10%, of everything that he got from the spoils of this war. And Paul is going to write all about this in Hebrews, because Melchizedek is going to say in the Psalms that that the Messiah is going to be a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And he's going to show that, hey, it doesn't really tell you anything about Melchizedek, who his genealogy is, where he's from, or who he has descendants from. So it's like he's going to pull on this as like a type and say, it's like he has no beginning and no end, typologically. And then he blesses Abraham, so the greater is blessed by the lesser, and then Abraham tithes to him, so the lesser gives tithes to the greater. And he's going to make Melchizedek in his priestly order a type of what Christ is going to be, a king and priest. And so notice he's a king and a priest, okay? And so where the tribe of Israel divides the priesthood and the kingly office, Melchizedek has both of them. And so he's going to point out that Melchizedek is superior to Abraham as a way of explaining how the new covenant, which is with bread and wine, is superior to the old covenant. That's the point. And the point is, it comes later, but it's better. Just like John is going to say about Jesus, the one who comes after me is better than me. Even though I came first, he's better. Just like the second Adam is better than the first Adam, and that's why God's always picking the younger over the older. He's showing you that what comes later is better, and here's why. God has a pattern with us. He gives us a rule, and then we fail to keep the rule. And then he gives us a new covenant that is based on grace and mercy. Okay, you're going to screw up, but I'm going to forgive you. Okay, and all that's required to enter into the new covenant is humility, but the old covenant requires perfection. So your choices are be perfect or be humble. And he's going to keep doing this. He's going to do it again and again and again. Be perfect or be humble. Be righteous by your own strength or be humble, and I'll account you as righteous for acknowledging my righteousness. Okay? And God's going to do this again and again and again and again. And so you're going to see this in Abraham, because he's going to be the first one where God's going to give him a word, and he's going to screw up, and he's going to try to fulfill it himself. Okay? So then the king of Sodom, this is also important. He says, take the goods to yourself, and he's going to say, nope. He's going to give back everything except for what his allies take. So all the stuff that his men took, all the plunder that his men took from these kings. Now remember, these kings had sacked Sodom, they'd sacked Gomorrah, they sacked the Amorite towns, they sacked Seir. They're holding all kinds of gold and stuff like that. Okay, gold, probably clothes. I mean, they just pillaged everything. You know, that's what you do when you sack these people. You take their clothes, you take their tools, you take all their good stuff. You take their gold, definitely. You just take their stuff and you just head out. Okay? Sometimes you're taking slaves. Sometimes you're taking women and children. And then it says he's gonna take everything except for what his young men have eaten. And then Honor, Eshol, and Mamre are his confederates. And these guys are all Amorites. So the Amorites who were just sacked by Sodom and Gomorrah, he's actually avenging them. Okay? And so he's got a good relationship with the Amorites after that. And that's why God is not going to destroy the Amorites until they get really bad, because they're confederate with Abraham. He's good to them. They're good to him. Okay? There's no conflicts with him and the Amorites. And then the Amorites are going to go on after Abraham does this to go reconquer Babylon and take all of that. And it's because of that that Nimrod is, he's in his decline now, and it's in his decline that he sets people to build the Tower of Babel. So he probably starts building it not long after this, and then the confusion of tongues thing happens around the time of Joseph. Okay? So, so then it says, after these things, the word of the Lord came to Abraham in a vision and said, "Fear not, Abraham, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward." Okay, so this is where he's going to be. This is the third reiteration of the promise. He says, "And Abraham said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing that I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus?" Now, I think Eleazar comes into the story. I don't remember where Eleazar comes in. I've seen movies where he comes in the story. I don't think it's significant here. He has the steward of his house is basically his main manager of his household business, if you will, is Eleazar of Damascus. And so that's kind of his right-hand man. Now, Eleazar in the story of Isaac is going to be a type of the Holy Spirit, and I'll show you that in a bit. Now he says, "Behold, you have given me no seed, and lo, one born in my house is my heir." Okay? So Eleazar of Damascus was apparently born in Abraham's house. He's apparently a servant born to Abraham, who he's been grooming up. Remember, he's like 85 years old now, and he's been grooming this guy to manage his household estate. And he's got flocks, he's got herds, he's got 300 trained soldiers. So this guy's got his own militia. He's got a lot of sheep and herds. He's got servants and stuff. You're probably looking at probably 1,000 or more people. I would guess that Abraham's people is somewhere in the ballpark of 1,000 to 5,000. Don't think of this as like a small tribe just because it's just talking about Abraham. In order to field 300 trained soldiers, and again, doesn't mean they're full-time soldiers, but they are trained. You want to have like 10 times that in terms of population. Now, maybe it's not that big. That's why I'm saying it could be like 1,000. But remember, these are all males who are trained for war, which means these males are of the age of having families, okay? And so you're looking at this and you go, okay, well, if they have families, then these guys, multiply that by 5. Because you're going to have a wife, and if you just have 3 kids on average of all these people, there's 1,500 people there. Well, Abraham's allies who are with him, I think, are in around 3,000 people. But I would guess that Abraham's house is in, with all his servants and everything, is somewhere in the 2,000 to 5,000 range. That would be my guess. Okay. So, anyways, he doesn't have an heir. He doesn't have anyone to inherit all this. Okay. He's like a local lord and like a sheik, and he doesn't have an heir to inherit this. And so he says, "Who's going to be my heir?" Because God's supposed to make a great nation out of him. Who's going to lead this thing when I'm dead? And he says, well, he said, "Behold, the word of the Lord came to him." This is important. The word of the Lord came to him, saying, okay? Now, I think this is the first time the word of the Lord is described as a person, okay? The word of the Lord came to Abraham, saying. So it's the word of the Lord saying something. So assume this is like the angel of the Lord or just the voice of Jesus, but it's essentially the word of the Lord as a person, okay? Saying, "This shall not be your heir, but he that has come from your own bowels shall be your heir." In other words, someone who comes from your own body is going to inherit your stuff. And he brought him forth abroad and said, "Look now towards heaven and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them." And he said unto him, "So shall thy seed be." So notice first he tells him his seed is going to be multiplied as the dust. That's his physical descendants. Then he tells him his seed is going to be multiplied like the stars. That's his spiritual descendants, okay? Now, I've never really heard any other teachers point out that difference, but you want to take that into the New Covenant and realize, you take that into Corinthians 15 and compare it. This is what he's talking about, okay? God is telling him he's going to multiply him, and now watch what he says. Remember how he said earlier that the families of the earth would be blessed by him. He basically says, whoever blesses you is blessed, and whoever curses you is cursed, and the families of the earth will be blessed by him, okay? Well, that has to do with his physical descendants. Whoever is good to the house of Abraham, they're physically going to be blessed by that. And that's why you have countries that are favorable to Israel tend to do well. Countries that turn against Israel tend not to do well. And you want to look at countries like Spain. You want to read about these countries and read about what happens to them afterwards. Okay, Spain turned on the Jews in 1492. England is going to turn on the Jews in right around World War II. Okay, America is turning on the Jews now. Okay, England ruled a quarter of the planet, and then they established Jewish Palestine, and that movement to establish the Christian Zionist movement to establish a Jewish Palestine was really largely driven by Christians in England and America, along with the Jews. Okay, and they worked with the King of Turkey to allow them to start to colonize it. And then when England took over from Turkey in World War I, they had the Balfour Declaration that basically was going to allow for the Jewish establishment of a homeland. And then England kind of reneges on that and just makes it their colony. And so they basically make it the British Palestine. And then the Jews eventually revolt against England and throw them off. And then America supports the Jews in the formation of their homeland in 1945. And with that, you see Britain and its colonies. First, they break up into a commonwealth, and they're not one empire anymore. Then they just decline in terms of their power, and America starts taking all the power in the world. So you really have the power shift from Spain. So they're going to turn on the Jews and kick them all out in 1492. And that's why the Jews are going to come, some of them are going to come to the Americas, North and South America, with Columbus. Basically, he's going to kick them all out. And then Spain has the most powerful, they literally control like 3/4 of Europe and all of the Americas. Okay? They're huge. They're hugely rich and hugely powerful. Then they turn on the Jews, and the Jews had always lived among them. When they're Islamic, the Jews lived among them peacefully. And then you start to have basically anti-Semitism spread from, really, it's going to spread from the Franks. You're going to start to have this with Philip II, the same guy who persecutes the Knights Templar. He is going to turn on the Jews. And you're going to hear anti-Semitism get worse and worse and worse because the Jews are becoming successful bankers, because that's the only thing they can do. They've got money, they've got math skills, they're intelligent, but they don't have land. And so they become merchants and bankers. And basically the Franks start to envy them because they're dealing with the Franks, and the Franks will use anti-Semitic stuff as a way to not pay their debts to the Jews. Okay? And then that's going to happen. That's going to spread to Spain. And then the Spanish are going to kick out the Jews in 1492. And that's what they'll do. They'll kick them out because they owe them money. And then a lot of the Jews are going to go to England from there. And they're going to go to the Americas. And then what happens is not long after that, it's going to take, in 1492, the Reformation starts in the 1500s. And that whole empire, that is the Holy Roman Empire, is ruled by Spain. Spain's the whole house of Catherine of Aragorn and King Charles V, or Emperor Charles V of the Holy Roman Empire. That's all Spanish, and they basically lose Germany within about 20 years of that. It starts to fall apart. They lose the Netherlands. They lose Belgium, they lose Switzerland, they lose, I don't think Scandinavia was part of the Holy Roman Empire, I'm not sure, it might have been. But then it's going to get split between the Habsburgs, and the Habsburgs are going to start the Holy Roman Empire that becomes the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and that starts to fall apart. But the Spanish are just going to lose everything, and then they're going to lose their armada to England. So it's almost like where the Jews went, all the power went. And that's why people are going to keep coming up with this Jewish conspiracy thing. But it really is just God's original promise to Abraham, which is those who bless thee, and he's talking about his physical descendants, the sand of the sea. He's saying will be blessed. And he says, through you, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. So people are going to be blessed if they treat the Jews graciously. Remember, the Jews are under God's discipline for rejecting their Messiah. But it's our kindness that's supposed to lead them to repentance. This is Romans 11, okay? Our kindness is supposed to lead them to repentance. And that's why we're not supposed to be puffed up against the Jews. We're not supposed to be anti-Semitic. even though they're under God's judgment. We're supposed to be gracious to them the way that God is gracious to us, even though we're under judgment because of our sin. Okay? So, now we're going to shift from his physical descendants to his spiritual descendants. And he's going to say, it's at this promise that he believes God and God counts it for righteousness. This is the new covenant, okay? Abraham has an old and a new covenant. The old covenant, he has to do something to inherit the land. He has to go into the land that God shows him. In the new covenant, he just believes God and it's accredited to him as righteousness. And in the new covenant, he says, brings him forth and says, look towards the heaven and tell the stars if you're able to number them. And he said, so shall thy seed be, okay? Remember how he said his seed would be as the dust of the sea. This is not long before this. This is probably within, 5 years or so before this, okay? The whole period between him coming out and now is a space of about 10 years, okay? So he goes from just saying, come into the land I show you and I'll make your name great. So that's a bilateral covenant. To, I'm going to multiply your descendants as the sand of the sea. There's his physical descendants. That's going to be the nation of Israel. To, I'm going to multiply them as the stars of the heaven, and he believes in God accounts them for righteousness. There's your type of the new covenant. And the stars of the heaven obviously are going to be the saints. It's going to be the ones who are made like the stars, who are going to conform to the image of Christ, who shone like the sun. And this is in Daniel 12, and it's in Corinthians 15, okay? So he says to him, and he said to him, I am the Lord who brought thee out of Ur of the Chaldees to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Lord God, whereby shall I know that I inherit it? And he said to him, take me a heifer 3 years old, and a goat 3 years old, and a ram 3 years old, and a turtle dove 3 years old. So notice when Paul is pulling this out and talking about this stuff as New Covenant stuff in Galatians, in Romans, and in Hebrews, okay? He's explaining this is the foretype of the New Covenant. Abraham had a bilateral covenant before that. He had to go into the land blind to inherit a land that God would show him. He gets there and God says, here's the land now. He shows it to him and says, this is the land that you're going to inherit, okay, after Lot leaves. Then he says your physical descendants are going to multiply, okay? So now Abraham he's asking God, how shall he know he'll inherit it? And this is the part where God can swear by no one greater than himself. So he has Abraham take of the clean animals, the sacrifice animals, okay? So you see a heifer, you see a ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon, okay? All these are going to be used in the temple sacrifices. And he takes them and he divides them in the midst and laid each piece against each other, but the birds he divided not. And when the fowls came upon the carcasses, Abraham drove them away. Now people are going to try to make something about this, like this means something. I don't know. Maybe it does. I don't know. I'm not going to try to spiritualize that. But it says, when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abraham. Now, this is important. When's the last time you had a deep sleep happen? And the answer is when Adam basically gets laying down and Eve comes out of him, okay? So notice a deep sleep falls on Abraham, okay? Notice these animals are slaughtered. These animals who are types of the sacrifices are slaughtered, and Abraham goes into a deep sleep like Adam went into a deep sleep, okay? Do you see the typology here? That's Christ crucified. He's shredded for our transgressions, and then he goes down into a deep sleep, okay? And while he's in a deep sleep, it says listen, it doesn't just say a deep sleep fell on him. It says a horror of great darkness fell upon him, okay? This is like Jonah going into the belly of the whale. Read that in Jonah and compare it to this. A horror of great darkness. He's experiencing a type of death. And while he is dead, it says, and he said, remember he's asleep, like Adam was asleep. Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed, remember he's saying a seed is like the stars of the heaven, shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Why is this important? Because Abraham's descendants are going to be, this is really important. Abraham's descendants are going to be in the land of Canaan, being afflicted by Philistines, by Ishmael, who's an Egyptian, by the Philistines, which are an Egyptian tribe, and then down in Egypt, okay? In a land that's not theirs. The land is not theirs until they come back and claim it in Joshua's day, okay? God's going to give it to them, but it's not theirs yet. Now, the type of this is, remember, he's falling in a deep sleep like Adam falls in to get Eve, okay? Adam's children are in a land that's not ours. This earth is not ours, okay? And we're afflicted for 4,000 years by Satan and his angels, okay? And so the type there is the church merging out of Abraham, which is the stars, just like Eve comes out of Adam when he's in a deep sleep, okay? And then he says, in that nation whom they serve, I will judge. Now, the nation obviously is Egypt, and this for Abraham's physical descendants. For us, it's Nimrod's nation, okay? It's that other false nation of all nations, okay? And then it says, and afterwards they will come out with great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and you shall be buried in a good old age, okay? But in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Okay? So in other words, the Amorites are sinful, everyone's sinful, but the Amorites are not bad enough for God to justify himself destroying them and giving Abraham their land. That's why. And then the Amorites are going to go on to be the dominant Canaanite tribe. Okay? Fourth generation, they're going to be in Egypt exactly 4 generations. And so you see the nation whom they serve, which is Egypt, he's going to judge. And they're basically going to be a stranger in a land that's not theirs. That's the entire time from basically this day forward. And then 430 years after, they're actually going to count, Usher's going to count the 430 years from when Ishmael starts persecuting Isaac, which would be exactly 15 years, 25 to 2002. It's exactly 30 years, I think, after Abraham comes out of the Promised Land, or after Abraham comes out of Haran. He's going to count 430 years from that point to them getting the law, and it's exactly 430 years. I've redone his math, okay? And so then he says, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace and be buried in good old age, okay? So it says, and it came to pass, and when the sun went down, it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces, okay? This is a type of who God is. Remember, he's a burning fire clothed in thick darkness, okay? So it's a burning lamp and a thick, like some will call it a smoldering pot or a smoldering furnace, okay? This is what Christ is going to look like when he comes down on Mount Sinai, but this is also what the Father looks like in the fullness of his glory. He's a consuming fire clothed in thick darkness, and that's why hell is the lake of fire and eternal darkness, okay? It's the outside of God, okay? So, God goes through by himself. He's swearing by himself. Abraham is dead, okay? And Abraham is being a type of Christ here, and the Lord is being a type of God here, okay? God the Father, the whole Godhead, okay? And then it says, in the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, unto thy seed I have given this land, from the river Egypt to the great river Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaims, the Amorites. And I think the Rephaims are giants. I believe they are. Yeah, the Rephaims are a tribe of giants. So apparently in the land where Ephraim is going to be, it says the land of Perizzites and of the giants. This word is Rephaims. So apparently there's giants in the land already in Abraham's day. So the Canaanites are already getting into mating with at least these Perizzites. These Perizzites are already getting into intermingling with angels, apparently, and there's more giants coming. So this is the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites. Remember I said the Gergesenes or the Gerasenes? It seems to be the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. So there's Jerusalem, okay? So you notice the Sinites and the Archites are already gone, okay? These people are going to go north to Lebanon. They're going to go into Southeast Asia, and they're going to go into China. They're already gone by this time, okay? Probably because, remember, the Horites are in Mount Seir. Not that far south of Mount Seir is Mount Sinai, okay? And so probably they see what's going on with Nimrod, and they're going to skedaddle. That's my guess of what happens. They're going to skedaddle out of where they see him growing his empire and conquering everything around him, and he's obviously not averse to conquering Canaanites. And they probably skedaddle out of there, and it looks like they're going to go, again, north to where they're stronger, where the Hittites are up there, and the Sidonians are stronger up there. They're seafaring. And then they're probably going to go through the Red Sea, and they're going to migrate down through to East Asia from there. So then Sarah has a smart idea. She says, oh, you're going to have a child through your body. Well, she has no children, but I have this Egyptian handmaid named Hagar. Why don't you have a child through her? And this is a common policy. That's why you see Jacob's wives doing this, and they're not from the house of Abraham. This is a common policy that people are doing. The Levirate law of raising up children for your brother, and the handmaid's law about raising up children for a barren mistress apparently has been in play for a while already. Okay, and so she gives her because Sarah knows that he has to have a child through her. Now they might have thought Lot was going to be that heir, because obviously, by the time they go into the promised land, Abraham's 75 and Sarah is 65. So it might have been like, okay, my time's passed. Maybe Lot's going to be that heir. And it's after Lot kind of goes back into Sodom and decides to stay in Sodom, even after he's been kicked out or been kidnapped and Abraham's got him back, he's still staying in Sodom, that they're probably like, okay, it's not going to be Lot. So who's it going to be? Okay. And that's when she gives up Hagar. And so it says, and Sarah, Abraham's wife, took Hagar, her maid, after Abraham had dwelt 10 years in the land, so he's 85, and he gave her to be husband to Abraham's wife. And he went into Hagar and conceived, and she had Ishmael, and out popped Muslims. Okay? And then it says, after she conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. So in other words, once she became pregnant, she started to condescend to Sarah, who is her owner, basically. She's her servant. Okay, and she does become, notice she says, and gave her to her husband Abraham to be his wife. Okay, so Abraham does have two wives. Okay, she is considered his wife, but she's also still Sarah's servant. Well, now she's like his favorite wife because she's bearing a son. Okay, and she starts to look down on Sarah, and Sarah's like, no, this isn't cool. And Abraham says, she gets mad at Abraham, and Sarah says to Abraham, my wrong be upon thee. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she conceived, I was despising her, Lord. The Lord judge between me and thee. And this is what Sarah's doing. This is amazing. Women, listen to this. You remember in the law how a husband or a father can revoke a woman's business deal or her promises and stuff like that because she's under authority, okay? So listen to what she says. She says, my wrong be upon thee. She's like, I was stupid to give you Hagar, but it's on you because you could have stopped me. So I want you to hear this. She is holding her head accountable for listening to her. Okay? My wrong be upon thee. It's like if Eve had held Adam accountable for listening to him. Eve, you ate the fruit. Here, Adam, have some fruit. Adam eats fruit. Adam, it's your fault. You ate the fruit. You shouldn't have listened to me. Eve could have done that because that's what God did. He blamed Adam for listening to Eve. Okay? So Sarah is blaming Abraham for listening to her. Okay? She's like, my wrong, she's admitting I'm doing something wrong here, be upon you, but it's your fault for listening to me, okay? And so she said, the Lord judge between me and thee. This is an Adam and Eve scenario all over again. And she is playing the Eve. She's like, what happened with Eve? Oh, she gets a promise. What happens with Abraham? Or what happens with Adam? He gets a judgment. And so Abraham is like, crap, I'm the new Adam. Yes, you are the new Adam. And so Abraham says to Sarah, behold, thy maid is in thy hand. Do what pleases thee. In other words, you want to get rid of her? Get rid of her. Okay? So he is pushing the responsibility back to Sarah. Okay, if you don't like this maid, then get rid of her. Okay? He is not going to uphold her as his wife and tick off his first wife because he listened to her. Okay? So he's going to say, do what it pleases her. And it says, and when Sarah dealt harshly with her, she fled from her face. So basically Sarah started being abusive to Hagar, and Hagar fled. Okay? What did she do? Did she beat her? I don't know. Probably. The angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness, by the fountain of the way of Shur. And he's going to do this twice for her. He's going to make a fountain for her in the wilderness. Okay? God loves the Arabs. God loves the Ishmaelites. God loves the Muslims. They need to come to faith in Christ, just like the Jews do, but God loves them, okay? Hagar listen, she didn't sign up for this. She didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on her. She had to just, be handed over to this dude, which is kind of an honor because he's pretty much like a king. And she's going to be handed over to him to bear his errors. So that's, much better than just being a servant. And then she starts to get a little uppity, and what happens? She's getting beaten. Why? She didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on her, okay? So she goes out in the wilderness, and God's like, I know this isn't your fault. And he said, the angel of the Lord was talking to Hagar. Hagar, Sarah's maid, whence camest thou, and whither wilt thou go? In other words, where do you come from, and where are you going? She said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. Now I want you guys to hear this. I want you to hear this, okay? Sarah and Hagar are types of the Jews and the Christians, okay? Sarah's a type of the Christians. Hagar's a type of the Jews. Return to thy mistress and submit thyself under her hands. Remember, Sarah is both the sister and the wife of Abraham. We are both the sister, because we're born of God, and the bride of Christ. Okay? And he says to the Jews. Remember, the Jews were given over to Gentile captivity, but there's a segment of Gentiles who are grafted into Israel and commanded to treat them well. Okay? So he says, return to thy mistress and submit yourself to her hand. What are the Jews supposed to do? They're supposed to submit themselves to their Gentile captivity. And if they're wise, they would submit themselves to the church, because the church is the part of the Gentile captivity that's supposed to treat them well by law. Okay? And so this is what Hagar is told to do. And then the angel of the Lord says unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for a multitude. Why? Here's why. Because remember, Abraham has two seeds. Abraham has a seed that's going to multiply by like the dust, that's his physical descendants, and Abraham is going to have seed that's going to multiply like the stars, that's his spiritual descendants. Now, that typology of the children born of the promise and the children born under servitude are going to be transferred to Sarah and Hagar. Okay? Notice it's after God makes both promises that now you have the issue with Sarah and Hagar. Okay? And remember how it says, more blessed is the barren woman, that's Sarah, than she who is, I think it's she who has a husband, or she who has many children. It's one of those things. But anyways, the one who has many children is Hagar, who is going to be a type of physical Israel now, and Sarah is going to be a type of spiritual Israel. Okay, so the descendants that come through them are going to be types of the church and physical Israel. And so now he says, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it will not be multiplied for a multitude. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has heard thy affliction. So Ishmael means God shall hear. Okay? And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against. Now think about the status of the ethnic Jews. Okay, this also applies to the Arabs, but think about the ethnic Jews. He will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he will dwell in the presence of his brethren. Okay. Now it turns out the Arabs were straight up barbarians, and they pretty much were straight up barbarians until they got oil. Okay. People want to talk about the culture and all this stuff of the Islamic civilization. That ain't the Arabs. Okay. The Arabs were a bunch of scimitar wielding, camel riding, killing people. Okay. They sacked the Sassanid Empire and the Byzantine Empire, but now they have an empire that is full of Greeks and Persians, okay? And those Greeks and those Persians and those Chaldeans form the Islamic cultured caliphate, okay? The Umayyad dynasty, who starts this whole thing, they lose power of this thing within like 100 years, okay? And then you're going to have different factions. So you're going to have this other faction, which is Arab, that's going to rule for a little bit, and I forget what it's called. And then the Turks are going to come in. And then you're going to have Salahuddin rule it for a bit, and he's a Mede. You're going to have the Melmuks rule it. They're Egyptian, okay? And you're going to have all these different people ruling the caliphate, and eventually it's going to fall to the Ottomans. That's the last unified caliphate you have. But like the ones ruling up in Spain, these are mostly Moors. These are not Arabs. Okay, the Moors are going to be an Egyptian, not Egyptian, but a Puttite people, which is going to be Hamite. The Semitic Arabs don't really, they dominate it for about the first 100 years, okay? But they are barbarians. They are wild people, okay? They are constantly fighting. If you read the story of the early formation of Islam, they were constantly fighting amongst themselves. They had basically nonstop conflicts during Muhammad's life, and then after Muhammad died, they had nonstop conflicts, and then they stopped those conflicts, and then they eventually start to spread, and they start to take over the Sassanid Empire, and then they have conflicts again over who's going to succeed Muhammad, and then that's going to turn into different dynasties, and they're eventually going to be taken over by the Turks. So they're just not. They're not administrators. Okay, these are not people who are like, let's build universities. And now they're trying to do it because they've got a ton of money. And what are they doing? We're going to build the Burj Khalifa and then truck out the poop. Like, they're just not civilized people in general because they're descended from this wild man. He was called to be a wild man. Now, they can live in the desert and they can make it work. They're tough as nails, and which is why they're really hard to conquer. Nobody ever really conquers the Arabs, okay? I mean, look at all these world empires. They never really conquer the Arabs because they're wild men, okay? But then the Arabs can't really do much in terms of starting a great civilization either. So he dwells in the presence. This is like saying in the face of the Panyim. It's that same word, Panyim. The presence or before his brethren, okay? In other words, he's going to be against them, okay? And then he says, he called the name of the Lord. He says, she called the name of the Lord that spake to her, thou God seest me. Let's see what she says. She called the name of the Lord, the name of Yahweh. This is important. El Roy. El Roy, the God that sees her. Okay? So notice Hagar calls Yahovah El Roy. El is the shortened form of Elwah, which is where the Aramaic Aloha and the Arabic Allah comes from. Okay? So El and Elwah is a generic name for God. Okay? Yahovah is the name of the Lord, but she doesn't know. He doesn't give her his name. Just as the angel of the Lord appears to her, this is Moses narrating this, but she doesn't give her a name, so she calls his name the God that sees her. El Roi. El Roi, okay? The God that sees her. That is, this is technically the God of the Arabs, okay? And she's going to go dwell in Arabia. And it says, wherefore is well said, the well was called Ber Lahai Roi, which is basically means well of the living one that sees me. Okay? Behold, it was between Kadesh and Bered. Okay, so this is an important location. So where's between Kadesh and Kadesh? Let's see where this is. So apparently, I don't know if this is Kadesh Barnea, if this is the same place. Apparently, this Kadesh is going to be in Syria. So it's going to be right around the border between Lebanon and Syria. That's where she goes. So apparently she flees north. Maybe. There might be other Kadeshes here. I could be way off. So I'm not going to go into super detail on that. Maybe I will later when I get bored. So anyways, it says, so Hagar bare Abraham a son, and Abraham called his son's name Ishmael. So the name Ishmael that he gets for his son, Hagar gets from the Lord himself. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, so the Lord names Ishmael. Okay? And so Hagar returns to Abraham with a divine word from the Lord saying, I'm supposed to return to you and submit to Sarah, and he told me my son is named going to be Ishmael. And so Abraham says, that came from God. And the son is named Ishmael. Imagine this. This is a servant coming back to him saying, I heard from your God, and he told me my son is named Ishmael. Abraham's like, I'll allow it. Sarah doesn't have nothing to say about it. Remember, Sarah was abusing her, but she's submitting to Sarah now, okay? So when Abraham was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram. Now notice he's still called Abram. And he said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect. I will make my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abraham fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Now he goes from all the nations being blessed through him, to him having many descendants, to now him being a father of many nations. And he says, Neither shall thy name be called any more Abram, but I am going to call thee Abraham, for the father of many nations I will make thee. So somehow he's going to be a father of a bunch of nations. How is that going to work? Well, again, that's going to have a physical side, because he's going to literally have 12 Ishmaelite tribes, and the Midianites are going to come through him, the Edomites are going to come through him, and then the Israelites are going to come through him. So that's a bunch of nations coming through him. But this is going to have a double connotation with the sand and the stars. He's also going to be the father of many nations spiritually. So he says, I will make thee exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations of thee, and kings, plural kings, shall come out of thee. Okay, so the kings of the Edomites come out of him. The kings of the Israelites come out of him. I don't know if the Midianites have kings. I think they do have kings. So the kings of the Midianites come out of him. And he says, I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. I will give unto thee and thy seed after thee the land which thou art a stranger, the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession. I will be their God. So now the land is going to his seed after him. But remember, he's going to make him a father of many nations. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee for many generations. So this is all going to be about his physical descendants, because those physical descendants are going to get the land of Canaan, but they have to keep the covenant to keep it, okay? So he says, This is my covenant which thou shalt keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man-child among you shall be circumcised, okay? You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man-child in your righteousness. He that is born in the house, or bought with money, or any stranger which is not of thy seed. He that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. My covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. What is he talking about? The everlasting covenant is ultimately going to come out of Abraham's flesh, but the flesh that it comes out of must circumcise themselves. Okay? And so Jesus is going to be circumcised. Okay? He's going to be the last generation in which circumcision is required. But the everlasting covenant comes through him. Okay? So him and his seed and everyone from him, it says, my covenant shall be in your flesh. Okay? His covenant is Christ. And Christ is in Abraham's flesh. But the ones through who Christ is going to come are going to be circumcised. He also says it's going to be on the 8th day. Why? Because there's going to be 7,000 years, and then the 8th millennium, or the 8th day, signifies eternity. And Barnabas is going to talk about this in the Epistle of Barnabas. Okay? The 8th day is eternity. Okay? That's when we put off our flesh altogether. So people are going to look at this. Your Jews are going to look at this, and your Judaizers are going to look at this. Your Messianic Jews and your Hebrew roots are going to look at this, and they're going to say, this circumcision is an everlasting covenant, so therefore the law of Moses is forever. This is stupid, and here's why. The law of Moses hasn't been given yet. There's no Sabbath laws. There's no food laws. There's none of that has been given yet. The only thing that's been given is circumcision. But we know from Galatians that circumcision is done with. So we need to have a justification for that. He says this circumcision, it says this covenant will be in his flesh for an everlasting covenant, okay? Well, it doesn't say his covenant will be among the circumcised for an everlasting covenant. He says, he that is born of thy house and he that is bought with thy money must needs be circumcised, okay? He that is born of Abraham's physical house and that is bought with his money must be circumcised, and his covenant shall be in Abraham's flesh for an everlasting covenant. Well, the covenant is Christ, who comes from Abraham's flesh, okay? It's not about circumcision. The everlasting covenant is not about circumcision. All he says is that he's going to give Canaan for an everlasting possession and he'll be their God. And then he's going to say, this is my covenant. And then he's going to end with, my covenant shall be in your flesh. Okay? So the point is he's going to tell them that the people from whom his covenant that's in his flesh will come will be obedient and circumcised. And so that's why Christ is going to come from the circumcision. Because the covenant that's in his flesh comes from the circumcision. The covenant, the everlasting covenant, has nothing to do with circumcision, except for that it comes from the circumcision. Does that make sense? So, God says to Abraham, as for Sarah thy wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be. And Sarah means princess. Sarai means, what does Sarai mean? I think it means like contentious. Dominative. Dominative. I just gotta look up this word. Sarai means dominatrix. To occupy a more elevated or superior position. This is hilarious. Sarai means dominant woman. Sarah means princess. Okay? That's awesome. That's hilarious. Long story. There's a long story there. But anyways, Sarah, and then it says, then he says, and God said to Abraham, as for Sarah thy wife, I will call her name Sarah, okay? I will bless her and give thee a son also of her. I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Okay? Now, the Arabs don't have kings. This promise isn't going to Ishmael. The Ishmaelites don't have kings. The Jews have kings. The Israelites have kings. And we grow up to be kings and priests of the order of Melchizedek. Okay? The Arabs, the physical descendants of Abraham, and then this is also going to extend to represent the Jews typologically, they don't grow up to be kings. Okay? This just comes from Sarah. So then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed and said in his heart, shall a child be born to him who is 100 years old? and Sarah that is 90 years old. Okay? Abraham said, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee." And God said, "Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac." Laughter. Okay? Notice Abraham laughs first, then Sarah laughs. So his name is called Isaac because of Abraham's laughter, but Sarah's going to laugh too. Okay? "And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him." Okay? So he says, "I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, with his seed after him." So Isaac is the type. Christ is the ultimate fulfillment. Okay? So he says, "As for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him. I will make him fruitful. I will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation." 12 princes, not kings. Princes. Okay? A prince is like a ruler, but it's not a king. Okay? So his 12 princes are going to be a type of the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? Isaac is going to be a type of Christ. So then he says, "But my covenant I will establish with Isaac, and Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year." So he tells her exactly when. Okay? And he left off talking with Abraham, and God went up from Abraham. Now, it says in Romans that Abraham glorified God after getting this promise. Well, how would Abraham have glorified with God? And the answer is not a whole lot of 100-year-olds and 90-year-olds are still having sex. Okay? He's going to glorify God because he's going to say, this time next year, you're going to have a kid with Sarah. So guess what he's going to go do? Which he probably hasn't done in a while. Let's go have sex with his 90-year-old wife. Okay? "And he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham, and Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born of his house, and all that were bought with money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of the foreskin the same day, as God said to him. And so the Arabs are circumcised." Okay? "And Abraham was 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. In the same day, Abraham was circumcised, and Ishmael his son, and all the men of his house, born in his house, bought with money of a stranger, were circumcised." So they had a big party of circumcision, and everyone was feeling like crap afterwards. "And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day, and he lifted up his eyes, and lo, 3 men came, and they stood by the tent door." So this is going to be, notice you're going to have 3 men, okay? 3 men, assume these are males. "This is my Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched to wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort your hearts. After that you shall pass on, for therefore are ye come to thy servant. And they said, So do as thou hast said." So it's 3 men. This is important. And they say, the 3 men say to Abraham. Remember, he's going to call the 3 men, my Lord. And they are going to respond. Okay? This is a type of the Godhead. Okay? So when I talk about typologically how the Spirit is like God's wife and like our mother, don't think I'm saying the Spirit is absolutely a woman and all the types of the Spirit are a woman, okay? The types of the Godhead are going to be, in 2 instances here in Abraham's story, 3 men. It's going to be here 3 men, and then it's also going to be Abraham, Isaac, and Eliezer. 3 men are going to be both types of the Godhead, okay? So don't think it's exclusively that, okay? But also Abraham, Sarah, and Isaac would be a type of that as well, okay? So Sarah is going to be a type of the Holy Spirit. Hagar is going to be a type of Mary. Abraham's going to be a type of the Father, and Isaac's going to be a type of the Son, okay? And then Rebecca is going to be a type of the church. So the typology is going to be both Sarah and Eliezer, and here you have 3 men, and they are responding to him, and he is calling them Lord, okay? So he says, I will fetch a morsel of bread. So then Abraham hastened to the tent of Sarah and says, make ready 3 measures of fine meal. This is important, because remember, a woman leavens 3 measures of meal in Christ's prophecy. And he says, knead it and make cakes upon the hearth. And Abraham ran into the herd and fetched a tender calf, gave it to a young man in haste to dress it. And he took butter and milk and the calf which he had dressed and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. They said unto him, Where is Sarai thy wife? Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, in other words, 9 months from now. And lo, Sarah thy wife will have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. Okay? Now, Abraham and Sarah were old and stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Okay? Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure in my Lord being also. Okay? So my roommate told me this, and he studied biology and chemistry and stuff, that a woman has the exact number of eggs that she's going to have when she's born or when she's in the womb. So what that means is that Sarah is going to get an egg that was either in her body but it wasn't coming out, or it didn't come from her body. It's going to be a seed of Abraham, but it's somehow the child is not coming from her body. Okay? The egg is not coming from her body. Okay, it wasn't there. That's why she's menopaused. Okay? So this is like the Holy Spirit. The child doesn't come from the Holy Spirit's body. The Holy Spirit doesn't have a body, but it's the Father's seed, and it's born through Mary's body. Okay? But it's also the type that's in Hagar. So it says, And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of surety bear a child when I am old? Is this thing too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee according to the time of life, and Sarah will have a son. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, But you did laugh. Okay? Abraham laughed too. It's all good. We all laugh when we hear about this thing. It's crazy. And he says, The men rose up and went from Sodom. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham the thing which I will do, seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, all the earth shall be blessed from him. For I know him, that he will command his children the household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, and do justice and judgment, and may bring upon Abraham all which I have spoken to him. So notice, this is what the Lord is saying. I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. Okay? This is important. Remember, foreknowledge. For those he foreknew, he gave the right to become children of God. Okay? The word providence and the word foreknowledge are basically the same word. Okay? He knows something about what Abraham's going to do in the future. Why? He knows his character. But he also knows the character of his descendants. Okay? That they will do justice and judgment. Okay? So he's showing him, remember, this is three persons talking, and the head of those three persons is saying, Shall I? I know this, okay? Now, in these three persons, because two of them are going to go down to Sodom, they're a type of the Father, Spirit, and Son. Two of them go down to report to the third one what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, as if he didn't know, okay? And yet the same person is saying, I know what Abraham's going to do, and I know what his children are going to do, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham all that he's spoken of him, okay? So he's saying that I know that Abraham is going to teach his kids to do right, and that some of his kids are going to do right, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham which he has spoken of him. Okay? This is such a loaded statement here, because he's telling them that the promises that is going to be met by Abraham is conditioned on stuff that Abraham's going to do and his descendants are going to do. Okay? And he says that they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken of him. So this covenant and the fulfillment of all God's promises to Abraham is based on works that God knows Abraham and his descendants will do. Okay? This is what James 2 is talking about. This is what James 2 is talking about, and this is why James is going to quote when Abraham gives Isaac. God made a promise to Isaac, or God made a promise to Abraham that he would bless him, and Abraham was accounted as righteous for just believing the promise. But then Abraham is going to go and sacrifice Isaac, and then God is going to say, because you've done this, I will fulfill this promise that he already promised to him. Notice he's saying that he knows that Abraham will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the name of the Lord, so that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he's spoken of. Okay? It's faith plus works, and you need to hear this, you Protestants, okay? It's faith plus works, but it's works that God knows in advance that we will do, okay? So it's not because of our works that we're accounted righteous, but it's because of our works that God keeps our promise to give us everlasting life, okay? So that everlasting life is predicated on works, but it's not the justification that God counts us righteous for. We're accounted righteous for believing God. We enter into eternal life through our works that come from believing God, okay? And this is exactly what James 2 is saying. You need to understand this is exactly what James 2 is saying when he's talking about not works alone with Abraham and Hagar, okay? I'm sorry, but Protestantism is wrong. It's just another corruption of Christendom. We're not counted righteous because of our works, but we are justified to enter into eternal life because of our works. And those are two different things, okay? So, the Lord says, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, because their sin is grievous, I will go down. So notice this is the Lord saying, I will go down, okay? And see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not, I will know, okay? Now notice he just got done saying he knows the future of Abraham and his descendants. But about Sodom and Gomorrah's sin, he's going to go down to see if what he's heard about it is true. This needs to blow your mind in terms of omniscience, okay? Is God just using anthropomorphisms and poetic language and blah, 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 or is he trying to tell you something about himself? He's trying to tell you something about himself. Remember, these three men are a type of the Father, Spirit, and the Son. Two of them are going to go down. These are the two angels that go to Lot, okay? That's going to be like the Spirit and the Son that go down to the earth. The Father never encounters sin, okay? So the Lord in this case, this is really Jesus and two angels, but they're acting as a type of the Father, Spirit, and Son, okay? The Father doesn't look upon sin. That's why he can say, I never imagined this. It never entered into my mind. In him there is no darkness at all. He's not tempted to sin. He doesn't look upon sin. He is aloof from sin, okay? Sin takes place in a domain where he is not, the Father is not, okay? That's what space-time is. But the Spirit and the Son interact within that space, okay? And they go back and forth between the Father and the Son. And that's why they're both called advocates. They intercede back and forth between the Father and the Son in space-time. The Father does not. So this is important. Jesus is a type of the Father, and the Father is saying, I know what Abraham and his children are going to do in the future. The Father is in eternity all the time. The Spirit is both places at once. Jesus is either one or the other. But the Spirit's in him, so he's also, through the Spirit, has access to both. Okay? So, when he's here as a type of the Father, he's saying he knows the end from the beginning. Okay? Because he's in eternity. But the Father doesn't look upon sin. There's no sin in eternity. All sin is cast outside of God in eternity. And this temporal space where God is not, called space-time, he needs the Spirit and the Son to go down and explain what's going on in terms of sin. The angels are seeing it. The angels are interacting with it. The Spirit and the Son interact with it, but the Father does not. Okay? So he says, I will go down. Not we will go down. He says, I will go down, and yet he sends two angels down. Because they're types of the Spirit and the Son going down. Okay? So the Father goes down through the Spirit and the Son. Because the Spirit is always connected to him. The Son has the Spirit in him. Okay? That's why he can say, I'm in the Father and the Father is me. But the Father himself remains aloof from sin. So he goes down to see whether they have done according to the cry of it. He's going to find out something. There is more theology here about the Godhead in this chapter in Genesis 18 than in most of your New Testament. Your New Testament is going to presume upon all this being true and just write in such a way as if it's true. But this is where much of your theology of the Godhead is going to come from. It's going to come from here. It's going to come from Proverbs 8. It's going to come from Genesis 1. You didn't need these church fathers to figure this out. It was always right here in the scripture the whole time, okay? You just have to understand the formula of the Father, the Spirit, and the Son, and then plug it in here and go, oh, he's calling them the Lord, and then he's saying, I will go down, and sending 2 angels down while he doesn't go down. That's because it's all types of the Father, Spirit, and the Son. So the men turned their faces from thence and went towards Sodom, and Abraham stood yet before the Lord. And Abraham drew near and said, wilt thou also destroy... Okay, so we're going to... So now it says, and the men, remember there's 3 of them, turned their faces from thence and went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord, okay? So notice he says, I will go down, and the men go down, but Abraham stays with the Lord, okay? Now, notice it just says in the beginning, it just says, 3 men stood by him, okay? Now it's like the Lord and these other men, okay? So we see a distinction. And so, as the 2 angels are going to walk down towards Sodom, remember they're up in the mountains, Sodom's down in the valley, he's going to see these 2 men going down there the whole time. The Lord stays with him, and he is going to barter with the Lord and say, he's really trying to barter for Lot's life, okay? Lot has been down there now for a decade. We know Lot has daughters. His daughters probably are of marrying age. He's assuming Lot has a household. He's assuming Lot has a family, and his descendants are still righteous, okay? He's 75 when he comes out of the land. He's probably around 80 when Lot leaves. He is now around 100, okay? So Lot's now been down there for 20 years, okay? So when he's bartering down from, what if there's 50 righteous, what if there's just 10 righteous? He is assuming you've got Lot, his wife, his daughters, there's 4, their husbands, and then their children. The minimum that they have children now, and they're all counted as righteous, and that's enough to spare the city. He's really trying to save Lot's life, okay? He knows Lot's down here, and he knows they're wicked. And so the Lord says he would spare it for 10's sake. And it says, and the Lord went his way as soon as he left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned his place, okay? So it doesn't say where the Lord goes. It doesn't say if he goes down to Solomon. It just says he went his way, okay? So now the 2 angels come to Sodom. So 2 men leave Abraham, but 2 angels come to Sodom, okay? Malak, 2 messengers. So apparently the word Malak and Melech are related. It says angel, king, ambassador, messenger, okay? And it says 2 angels came to Sodom, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, behold, my lords, now turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry there all night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go your way. And they said, nay, but we will abide in the street all night. Okay? Now, Lot is sitting in the gate of the city waiting to see these foreigners come through. Why? Probably because he knows how people deal with foreigners in Sodom. This is probably a common thing, that if somebody comes through there who's not one of them, they whisper and they talk and they pillage these people and treat them like crap, okay? I have lived in places that are like this. When you're not from there, word gets around very fast, and these people will line up to rob you, cheat you, steal from you, rip you off, give you a bad deal. And that's just the point. We're gonna. They don't like each other. They don't get along good. They're all wicked. But when an outsider comes through, they all gang up on the outsider. They're just wicked people. Okay. It says he pressed on them greatly, and they turned into him and entered his house, and he made him a feast and baked unleavened bread. That's interesting. He bakes them unleavened bread, and they did eat. Okay. It's almost like there's something here connected to an exodus that's about to happen in haste. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round about, both young and old, and people from every quarter. Both young and old, and people from all quarters. So everyone's like this, okay? And they called in the lot and said, "Where are the men which came into these night? Bring them out to us that we may know them." So these people are so messed up. This is not just this mob of people in the street. It says, the men of Sodom compassed the house, both young and old, and the people from every quarter. This whole city is full of people who are like this. These people are coming through, let's rape them. Why? This is just how bad they get. Now, we're getting there. We've seen our cities go to the point where you just have homeless people doing crack and heroin and stuff like that and camping out in your cities all over the place. Okay? It's getting worse and worse. Nobody is dealing with these people. Why not? Well, because everyone else is getting rich off the system that allows them not to have money for heroin, but not enough to ever, get a decent life going. Okay? The world is getting worse and worse and worse like this all over. It says, Lot went out to the door unto them and shut the door after them and said, "I pray you, brethren, do not do so wickedly. Behold, I have 2 daughters which have not known man," so they're virgins. "I pray you, let me bring them out to you, and do them what is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore they came under the shadow of my roof." Okay? And they said, "Stand back." And they said again, "This one came into sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now we will deal worse with thee than with them." And they pressed sore upon the man, and Lot came near and broke the doors. In other words, you're not one of us. You're basically sojourning among us. Now, remember, it was just 15 years before this that Abraham saved their cities for the sake of this Lot. Their kings know this, okay? Those kings are still alive. But the city's gotten so bad, they're saying, "We're going to come rape you too." Not to know that he's got this guy who just went in and kicked the crap out of the kings that kicked the crap out of them, who's got his back. But they're going to go try to rape him anyways. And he said, the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house. So these are the 2 angels. Now they're called the men. And he said, they smote the men who were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, and they wearied themselves to find the door. So notice these people, they make them blind. They're still trying to find the door. And the men said to Lot, "Hast thou here any besides?" Okay, remember, they got to find 10. "Hast thou here any besides? Son-in-law, thy sons, thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it." And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, "Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city." But he seemed as one who mocked one that mocked unto his. In other words, he seemed like he was joking. So his sons-in-law, he's got men who are betrothed to marry his daughters, okay? So people are going to say, well, his daughters, like Chuck Missler's going to talk about this, like maybe they haven't had sex with them because everyone's gay. Maybe. Or maybe they're just betrothed. But it does say he spoke unto his sons, which married his daughters, and said, "Get up and get out of this place." So maybe he has other daughters who have married people in the city, and Lot has only daughters. Or he's married, or he's given his daughters away in marriage, but these guys won't sleep with them because they're gay. Doesn't really say. It just says he went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, which married his daughters. So they could be other daughters, or they could be these daughters. Remember, he has been hanging out with Abraham since Abraham was 75 and Abraham's 100 now. So it's 25 years later. Okay? So I would assume he has multiple kids by now, not just two daughters. So maybe he still has two daughters that are virgins and other daughters that are married. It doesn't really say. Or these men married their daughters and didn't have sex with them because they're gay. One of those two things, okay? And it says, but it seemed like he was joking, okay? And when the morning arose, the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy two daughters which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand and upon the hand of his wife and upon the hands of his two daughters, the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth, that he said, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. So he's telling them, flee into the mountains, okay? Side. So this is the valley where he is. And he's telling them to flee up into the mountains because this whole valley is toast, okay? Now, this is the Red Sea is shrinking, but it was once all one sea. And he's saying this whole valley is toast. So, Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my lord. You going to argue? Behold now, thy servant has found grace in thy sight, and thou magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me by saving my life. Now notice he's calling these other two angels my Lord. Okay? Adon. Now, he's calling them my Lord, not my lords. He's calling them my Lord. Adon. Okay? Adonai. Okay? It's two angels. So then he says, Behold now, this city is near to flee unto, and it is a little one. Oh, let me escape thither, is it not a little one, and my soul shall live. And he said unto him, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow this city, for the which thou hast spoken. Haste thee and escape thither, for I cannot do anything till thou come thither. And the name of the city is Zoar. Okay? Now, there's 5 kings that are living in these 5 cities, and Zoar is the smallest one, and the king of Zoar is Bela, okay? He's going to tell you who the 5 kings are when he goes and fights in Genesis 13, I think, or Genesis 14. So this is the king of Bela, which is Zoar, okay? So King Bela of Zoar. So Shebner, king of Zeboim, and King Bela of Zoar, okay? So this Bela is going to end up fleeing up the mountain where he was supposed to flee anyways, because this valley is eventually, it's going to get filled in here. I don't know what happens, why the valley fills in with water. I really don't know. I know there's a river that flows down to the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is a lake. I think it's fresh water. And then it's going to flow down the River Jordan into the Salt Sea. And there's salt here just in the ground. And then it's going to fill up to become the Dead Sea. But I don't know why it stayed a river and didn't keep flowing out and it filled up after that. Something might have happened in terms of this catastrophe that also blocked the area so that it would fill up with water after that. And my guess would be before that this river overflowed here and then went straight to Elat and emptied into the Red Sea. That would be my guess. And so it says that Lot went out in the midst, they overthrew the cities which Lot dwelt. Now the angels told him they wouldn't destroy Zoar. And it says Lot went out, but he goes out of Zoar anyways. He's still scared. And so he goes out of Zoar and dwells in the mountain, and his 2 daughters with him. For he feared to dwell in Zoar, and he dwelt in a cave, he and his daughters. Okay? Now, Lot is not, he's called righteous Lot, but he's not a good listener apparently. Okay? First he talks them into sparing Zoar, and then they say he's going to spare it. Then he goes there, and he doesn't trust Zoar. It just says he feared to dwell in Zoar. So maybe it's Zoar itself is wicked, and so he doesn't want anything to do with it. Whatever's going on, or he gets accredited with, the harm that came to Sodom and Gomorrah. I don't know, but he goes and dwells in the cave, he and his daughters in the mountains. And the firstborn said to the younger, our father is old, and there is not a man in the earth to come into us after the manner of all the earth. Now, I don't know if they're just saying because we're isolated like this, we have no way of becoming pregnant, or because they think the whole world is like this. And they're dwelling in pretty isolated mountains. And literally, they've just watched all these cities get burned with fire, and they don't see any other cities from where they are, and they think the whole world is like this. They seem to be younger daughters. They seem to be virgins. And so they seem to think there is no man in the whole earth that's going to impregnate them. So they might have think this is like the end of the world, and it's like another... Remember, they have ancient legends that the world is going to be destroyed once by water and then a second time by fire. And they might think this is the second destruction by fire, and they're in it. And basically they need to repopulate the earth like what happened with Noah. That's what seems to be happening here, because they don't seem to think they'll possibly ever find another man. Okay? So it says, come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, and that we may preserve the seed of our father. And so they made their father drink wine that night, and the firstborn went in. So apparently his two daughters, because it says the firstborn, okay? So apparently his daughters were the only two daughters, and the men he couldn't get to come out were gay and wouldn't sleep with his daughters. And he said they lay with their father and lay with her father, and he perceived not when she lay down or when she arose. So she just got him really drunk and slept with him while he was asleep. And it came to pass on the morrow that the firstborn said to the younger, behold, I lay yesternight with my father. Let us make him drink wine this night also, and now go in and lie with him, that they may preserve seed of our father. And they made their father drink that night also, and the younger arose and lay with them. So it could just be the older or the younger daughter, or these could be his only two daughters. And it says, and he perceived not when she lay down, nor when she rose. Thus were both of the daughters of Lot with child by their father. So I'm just going to assume both the daughters these are the only two daughters he has. And the firstborn bare a son, and his name was Moab, which means Moab, the same as the father of the Moabites these days. So Ab means father. What does Moab mean? And it says from her father. That's what Moab means. And then the younger one bare a son and called his name Ben-Ami, son of my people. So these two incestuous kids become Lot and Moab, or Moab and Ammon. Okay, and Ammon, Jordan, is named after Ammon. The Moabites are Ammon is kind of in the north of Jordan, and then the Moabites are directly south of them, and then directly south of them are going to be the Edomites. Okay? And so it says, Abraham journeyed from there and dwelt in Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. This is Philistine territory. And Abraham said to Sarah, his wife, she is my sister again, does this thing again. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. Now, I don't know why Abraham is leaving. I think he just rotates around because he's got huge herd, and so he just grazes an area, and then he leaves and goes and grazes in another area. But in this area, he does this, she's my sister thing, and she's pregnant with Isaac when he does this. And then God came to Abimelech by dream that night and said to him, behold, thou art a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her, and the Lord said, wilt thou slay a righteous nation? So Abimelech seems to think the Philistines are a righteous nation. Said he not unto me, she is my sister, and she even herself said, she is my brother, in the integrity of my heart and the innocency of my hands I have done this. And God said unto him in a dream, yea, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me, therefore suffered I not thee to touch her. So apparently something happened, and he said he had not come near. God basically prevented him from sleeping with her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. So notice how the prophets are like intercessors, okay? He shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. This is the same thing that God's going to say about Job to Job's friends. He will pray for you, and thou live, okay? If thou restore her not, know thou surely that thou shalt die, thou and all that are thine. I'm going to kill your whole household unless you give her back. And he prays for you, and then says it's okay. Therefore Abimelech rose early. Remember, Abimelech doesn't just have to give her back. He has to give her back, and then Abraham has to pray for him that God forgive him, and then God won't kill him. Okay? So he arose and called servants and told the things in the ears, and the men were sore afraid. And Abimelech called Abraham and said unto him, What hast thou done to us? And what have I offended thee, that thou hast brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? Thou hast done deeds unto me that ought not to be done. In other words, you bamboozled me. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, Thou sawest what sawest thou that thou done these things? In other words, what did you think that made you do this? And Abraham says, Because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. You assumed about us, bro. And yet, indeed, she is my sister, and she is the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. She became my wife. Yeah, that's a Satan kind of lie, where it's like, I'm technically telling the truth, but I'm deceiving you, okay? This is why his descendants are called sons of Satan later on, okay? You're saying things that are technically true, but you know you're lying, okay? And then you're going to absolve yourself by saying, technically, I was telling the truth. Yeah, she's your wife, bro, and she's pregnant. I don't get this. And it came to pass, and God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, This is thy kindness which thou shalt show me. At every place whither we shall come, say of me, he is my brother. So he has Sarah saying this everywhere they go, that he's her brother. Remember, she's going to go into these towns and shop, and she's going to have servants and stuff with her and protection. And whenever they ask about, who are you, what's your relationship to him, he's going to say, he's my brother. Abraham has 300 trained soldiers in his own house. But apparently these kings got more. And he just... So Abimelech took sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave them to Abraham and restored them to Sarah his wife. Like, some stranger comes up to you and he's got his own militia and you're just going to be like, I'm going to take his wife. No, it's because he's going around having her say that she's his sister. Who wouldn't want... Listen, he's a prince. Who wouldn't want to marry the sister of a guy with a lot of money and power? He's just inviting trouble. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before thee. Dwell where it pleaseth thee. And unto Sarah he said, Behold, I have given thy... Listen to what he's saying, okay? He is talking to Sarah, and he is really punking out Abraham here, okay? Behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes. In other words, he's a little biatch, is what he's saying. He is to thee a covering the eyes. A man who looks the other way when his wife gets taken. He is a little biatch, is what he's saying. He might be a prophet of God, but as a human being, he is a little biatch. Like, so here's $1,000 for your brother. He's rubbing it in. Unto all that are with, listen, unto all that are with thee and with all other. Thus she was reproved. Okay? He shames Sarah for following Abraham and doing this. He's a punk. Here's your 1,000. I gave 1,000 pieces to your brother. Lying ass hoochie mama. Anyways, she's pregnant with Isaac. He prayed, and Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. So apparently, God made Abimelech, his wife, and his maidservants all barren for this. And the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Abraham's wife. I don't even know what to do with this story. It's almost like Abraham is just like, he knows, like, well, I'm going to get more stuff like I got from Egypt. I can't wrap my mind around why he's like this, okay? But he's a fearful creature like human beings tend to be. And the Lord visited Sarah, as she said, and unto Sarah he had spoken, and Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age, and set the time of which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of the son born unto him Isaac. He circumcised Isaac on the 8th day, And he was 100 years old when he bore him, and his name was made to laugh because they both laughed when they heard about this crazy story. And she said, who would have said that it would have children and given suck, born in this old age? And the children grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast in the day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Isaac, mocking. Okay? And Paul is going to count this as persecution. And he is going to count from this day 430 years till the giving of the law of Moses. Okay? He's going to count this persecution. That's why it's in Galatians 4. Wherefore she has said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of the bondwoman shall not be heir even with Isaac. Okay? And Paul is going to say this is the persecution of those born of the flesh, of those born of the Spirit. Okay? He's going to say it's right here. And he's saying they will not be heirs with us. Those who persecute those who are born of the promise, that's born of the Spirit, will not be heirs with us in the land. In other words, the land is the earth. Okay? So they're going to be cast off. They're not going to be in the new heavens and new earth. And the thing was very grievous to Abraham's sight because of his son. So he loves Ishmael. But Sarah says, cast out the bondwoman and her son because she's mocking. Okay? The son of this bondwoman shall not be heir with my son, even with Isaac. In other words, he's not going to share the inheritance. And God said to Abraham, let it not be grievous in your sight because of the lad and because of thy bondwoman. In all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken unto her voice, for in Isaac thy seed shall be called. So the Lord commands him to hearken unto Sarah. So Sarah's normal jealous, because she's been jealous. And God is saying, this is of the Lord. He's saying, I'm using this. For in Isaac your seed shall be called. And Paul is going to call on this in Romans 9 and also in Galatians to say it's the same thing with Jacob and Esau. He's not saying he hated Esau before he was born. He's not saying he hates Ishmael. He blesses Ishmael. Okay? What he is saying is the election is through Isaac, because the elect one, Christ, is going to come through Isaac, okay? And this not being shared heirs with him is a type of the ultimate distinction between the righteous and the wicked, or those born of the flesh versus those born of the Spirit. So he's saying, leave it. Paul's going to explain it later, a couple thousand years from now. And also, the son of the bondwoman, I will make a nation because he is thy seed. Now, he already promises. So notice he says, I will make a nation because he is thy seed. Remember, he said, in thy seed, I'm going to make of thy seed a great nation. And he's saying, well, he's your seed too. So because he's your seed, I will make of him a great nation too. Okay? And Abraham rose up early in the morning, took bread and a bottle of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away, and she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. He doesn't give her no money. He doesn't give her anything. Here's some bread and some water. Peace out. Been nice sleeping with you and impregnating you and having my firstborn son through you. Here's some bread and water. Good luck. Don't worry, you'll be fine. You have your 13-year-old son. Okay? Or no, I guess he's 13. No, I'm sorry. He's going to be 5 years old, so he's 18 years old. So Ishmael's almost a man now. He's an 18-year-old kid. Okay? But he's an 18-year-old kid mocking his 5-year-old brother. He's 13 years older than him. So this 18-year-old kid, he's ready to get a job and be a man, take care of his mom. And the water bottle was spent, and she cast the child under one of the shrubs, and she went and sat down over against him a good way off, as it were a bow shot, and she said, let me not see the death of the child. And she sat over against him. So notice this, back in the day, an 18-year-old, they still count as a child. Okay? The legal age where they go to war is 20 back then. 20. Now, they lived to be older. But even in the days of Israel, or of Moses, it's 20 years old before they go to war. They're considered a child before the age of 20. Okay? And God heard the voice of the lad, and the angel of God called Hagar out of heaven and said to her, what aileth thee, Hagar? Fear not, for God hath heard the voice of the lad where he is. Arise, lift up your hand. Lift up the lad and hold him in thine hand, and I will make of him a great nation. And God opened her eyes and saw a well of water, And she went and filled her bottle with water and gave the lad drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer, and he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So where is Paran? So Paran is apparently south of Seir. Okay? And Egypt still controls the Sinai. And Hagar is Egyptian. So somewhere in here, he's going to dwell. He's going to be an archer, which means he hunts. And which means he probably might even become a mercenary or something. But he's going to be an archer. He's good at this. And therefore swear unto me, let's see. And it came to pass that Abimelech and Phicol, the chief captains of his hosts, came to Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. Now therefore swear unto me by God that thou not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's sons, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me, and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. Okay? Now I want you to listen to this. This is Abimelech, who Abraham bamboozled. He paid Abraham 1,000 pieces of silver. Abimelech is a lord of the Philistines. Okay? This is the Gaza Strip. Okay? And he says to him, swear unto me by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me in the land where thou hast sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. Now I want you to hear this, Israel-Palestine people, okay? I'm not talking about the West Bank. I am talking about the Palestinian Gaza Strip people, okay? Those are the descendants of the Philistines, okay? The Philistines have been sacked and stuff before, but the main population of Gaza has always been Philistine. They're not Arabs. They have been converted to Islam in a lot of cases, but a lot of them are Christians. You actually have people being converted to Christianity there in the Apostles' time. And they're going to be a mixed people, but their root race is Philistine. And Abraham swore, and then it said, Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. And Abimelech said, I wot not who had done this thing. In other words, I don't know who did this. Neither did thou tell me, neither have I heard of it but today. In other words, you've never told me. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. And Abimelech set 7 ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. And Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? And he said, for these are 7 ewe lambs thou shalt take out of my hand, and they shall be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. Okay? Where he called the place Beersheba, where they swore to both of them. Thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up, and Phicol, the chief of the captain of the host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. And Abraham planted a grove in Beersheba, and called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned in the Philistines many days. Okay? Abraham is going to live among the Philistines, and he is going to make a covenant with the Philistines to always treat them fairly. Think about this, okay? Of all the people, the Canaanites, who get cast out of the land, you go to Israel, the people who never get cast out are the Philistines, okay? Philistines are right here. They never get cast out. The reason is because Abraham made a covenant with Abimelech, who is one of the kings of the Philistines, of Gerar. See, this is Gerar down here, okay? Gerar is going to be mentioned a lot. Because in 2 Gerar, Second Corinthians, King Asa, it says, they smote the cities all around Gerar, for the fear of the Lord came upon them, they spoiled the cities. This is the Ethiopians. This is the Cushites, apparently attacked Asa. And these are when the Cushites start to rule Egypt. But Gerar is, well, this is the last mention of Gerar here. But it looks like they almost went to war over something. But he basically shows up with the captain of his army. So they probably have a host of men with them. And they make a covenant. And they're going to be good to each other. This is Gerar way down here. Notice he's in the land of what would become Judah. But he's basically down in the Philistine Valley. I don't know why he goes from being up here to down here. Probably because his flocks and herds are getting bigger and they have big plains here. That would be my guess. So Abraham basically goes from dwelling in Bethel, that area of northern Israel, to dwelling more in Judah. Okay? So it's interesting how he kind of switches. And then when he goes from dwelling in northern Israel to Judah, that's when she gets taken captive again to the Philistines. Now you have something similar happen with national Israel. Northern Israel, basically the righteous leave northern Israel, because this is Gal getting into idolatry, and they go down into Judah, and then from there they go into captivity again. So there's a pattern going on here. But while he's among the Philistines, so it's almost like this is a type of the Jews' captivity, he makes a covenant with them to treat them well. And they're supposed to pray for the cities that they're in among the Gentiles and give them wives and blah, blah, blah. So it seems like the type of Abraham's story is a type of the Jews going into the crucifixion. Okay? It's coming forward to there. So the last mention of Gerar and Abimelech is going to be in the days of Isaac. Isaac is going to do the same thing with his wife that Abraham did with his same wife. And this is either his son, Abimelech, the son of Abimelech, or it's the same guy because they lived to be a lot older back then. It looks like it's the same guy about 60 years later. It's pretty bad. Pretty bad. And it's probably like 40 years later. 40-ish. So he's living in the land of the Philistines. And the last thing that's going to happen in Abraham's storyline, there's going to be some stuff that's after this, and I'm going to cover that in the story of Isaac, is he's going to sacrifice Isaac. And of course, it's going to be a type. And it says that Abraham goes and saddles his ass and takes Isaac in the wood for the burnt offering. And it says on the third day he lifted up his eyes and saw a place far off. And he went to his men and he goes to offer Isaac. The ram gets caught in the bush, and it's the substitute for Isaac. And in that context, the angel of the Lord, it says the angel of the Lord called out to Abraham out of heaven the second time. So we got 2 times, okay? The angel of the Lord called to him out of heaven, says, Abraham, Abraham, here am I. And he said, lay not thine hand on the lad. So he's up in heaven. This is the angel of the Lord. It's calling out to him. Neither do thou anything to him, for I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou that hast not withheld thy only son from me. Okay? So he believed God, and he fears God. And Abraham lifted up his eyes, and behold behind him a ram caught in a thicket. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him the burnt offering in the place of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place Jehovah-Jireh, the Lord will provide. Okay? Provide and providence. You notice the word see and provide means in advance. See. Providence. Viz or vid. The word is related to see. In other words, he's going to see in advance. In other words, he's going to plan for this. Okay? The Lord will provide. So providence is based on the word provide. Okay? It means foresee. In other words, he's going to plan for this, okay? That's what provide means. So it says, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Ra'ah, okay? And Abraham called the name of the place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to the day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Okay? So that's what Jireh says. Jehovah Jireh, a symbolical name for Mount Moriah. So Raya is Mount Moriah, apparently. As it says to the day, in the mount of Yehovah it shall be seen. Ra, or provide. Okay? So provide means to plan for or foresee a need, basically, and plan for it. Okay? And this is the angel of the Lord called on Abraham a second time, and he says, by myself I have sworn. Now remember, he already swore when he went through the covenant by himself. And he says, by myself said I have sworn, for because thou hast done these things. Now remember, the Lord has already told Abraham, when he was with the angels, that he knows what Abraham's going to do in advance and what his descendants are going to do in advance, so that he may keep his promises to Abraham. Now he's going to say to Abraham, for because thou hast done these things, and with not withheld thy son, thy only son, that in blessing thee, in other words, for that reason, in blessing thee I will bless thee, and multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven and the sand which is on the seashore. Okay? So notice first he goes dust of the earth, then he goes star of the heaven. Now he's saying both. Okay? And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. Okay? Now, possess the gate of his enemies. This is like saying, basically, that you have control over their gates. They can't shut you out, okay, or shut you in. So, like Samson takes off the gates of the Philistine. He possesses the gates of the Philistines. He takes off the gates, and they can't keep him out. Okay. This is also like the gates of Sheol. He can't keep us in because Jesus holds the keys to death and Hades. Okay. His seed shall possess the death of his enemies. Well, his enemies are Satan, death, and Hades, and he possesses their gate. He holds the keys, okay? So in other words, you can't lock me out. When the king shows up, you have to let him come in, okay? And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice, okay? Notice he's not saying, because I arbitrarily picked you and it has nothing to do with you. He's saying this. This is now the second time he's saying it's because of what you've done. And before he says it's because of what he's going to do. Okay? He's always accounting his works, but he's accounting them knowing he's going to do them because of his faith. And it's his faith that he accounts as righteousness. It's his other stuff that he accounts as the reason for the blessings he gets. There's a difference between being accounted righteous and getting eternal life. Those are two different things. Okay? There's no rule out there that says if someone's righteous, you have to give them eternal life. God could just made us to die. Okay? There's no rule. There's no equivalency between righteousness and eternal life. Justification and salvation are two different things. Okay? One has to do with judgment. The other has to do with outcome. Eternal life is the outcome. Righteousness, justification, is the legal precedent for the outcome. Okay? So Abraham returned to his young men, and they rose up together with Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt in Beersheba. So now they're going back to Beersheba. Beersheba would be considered the southernmost city of Israel proper. Okay, from Dan to Beersheba, they'd say. So from Dan is where he captured or killed Amraphel's armies. It's going to be way up here. To Beersheba. That's Israel. Okay? I am going to stop there. I am going to stop there, and that's kind of the end of Abraham's story. The rest, it starts being about Isaac here. And the story of Abraham going to get his bride is going to be the next one. And that's going to kind of lead into Isaac's story. So that will be the next session I will do, which is going to cover Genesis 22 to, I think, Genesis probably like 28, getting into Jacob and Esau. So that's all I'm going to cover for today. But I hope you guys are blessed by this. Again, read those Abraham stories very carefully and try to form your theology of the Godhead based on what is said about those three men, based on what the Lord says about Abraham. Form your doctrine of providence and how you understand how God accounts providence and accounts works before we do them because of providence, and then accounts faith as righteousness, and get all that from the story of Abraham, because that's where Paul's getting it and that's where James is getting it. Okay, they're both looking at Abraham's life story, and they're getting their doctrine of God, their doctrine of providence, their doctrine of God not looking on evil, not being tempted, their doctrine of basically how God accounts righteousness, and their doctrine of final salvation, all from Abraham's story. Okay, they're getting it through the Holy Spirit, but they're getting it from Abraham's story, because we are the descendants of Abraham who are blessed through him. Okay, so hope you guys are blessed by this. Hope you enjoy the rest of your week. Batman out. Peace.
Peace, I'm out. I'm Batman.